Hello there, and welcome to the Designated Pundits. We're previewing each and every Major League Soccer team before the 2026 season, and today we're talking LA Galaxy. I'm Bob, and I'm here with Edgar Zuniga from News Across the Galaxy today, previewing the LA Galaxy 2026 Major League Soccer season. We're going to recap 2025. We have incoming and outgoing players. We're going to talk transfers. We're going to talk depth chart. We're going to talk expectation and open up a Q&A segment at the end. So make sure if you are there, not only are you already subscribed and you already like this video, thank you for that in advance, but drop some questions in the chat and we'll pull them right up as we discuss the LA Galaxy. Edgar, how you doing today?
Yeah, you scared me for a second there. I thought it was like Groundhog Day because you mentioned let's preview the 2025 season, and I was like, please God, no, not again.
You got to live through 2026 one more year, maybe.
Oh, geez. I'm doing great. Like before we came on, we were talking about the weather, how unseasonably warm it is out here. It's disgusting. It's supposed to be raining, instead it's hot, and the weather people will let you know, oh, it's so wonderful outside. No, it's terrible. We need rain right now, and cooler weather. And meanwhile, on your end,
Yo,
how
it
cold
is
is it?
single digits. I think it's 9 degrees, going down to about 3 degrees tonight on the East Coast, right outside New York City. So, yeah, not looking great, but not looking great, much like the LA Galaxy in 2025. So let's talk about that season. It has passed. You don't have to live through it again. 7 wins, 9 draws, 18 losses, 14th place in the Western Conference. Eliminated from the CONCACAF Champions Cup quarterfinal. You were eliminated in the Leagues Cup semis. And you had a record 16 games before the first win. That is a MLS record for teams who come off of MLS Cup. The MLS Cup hangover lasted 9 months.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I talked to some of my colleagues from other podcasts and journalists, and we try to dissect what happened, how it happened, as it was happening, after it happened, and we all just kind of just shake our heads, and not only in disbelief, but because there wasn't just one thing to point at. It was just a series of things. And we'll get more into it as I talk about what we expect for this coming season. But yeah, it was horrible. And I don't wish that on any other fan base. A lot of people are saying, well, you guys, won a cup, right? I know you were saying, like, hey, Edgar, what are you upset you guys won a cup? We haven't won anything over here, but you don't want to see your team, fall apart completely. And then people started asking me every time we had guests, or I was a guest on the show, was it worth it? Knowing, and if you knew going in that you were going to win a cup, and then the next season you're going to be absolute trash. It's like,
Yes, I would do that. Yes. Sign me up.
yeah, well, I mean,
Present the dotted line.
we were pretty awful for 10 years before we finally won a cup. So winning the cup was a surprise, a very pleasant surprise, but to regress that bad was nothing anybody expected or wanted.
And when we look at how that happened, 46 goals was 8th in the West. Not good, but just slightly under average. 66 goals conceded, 14th out of the Western Conference out of 15 teams. Minus 20 goal differential, that was also 14th in the West. So this is more than a little MLS Cup hangover. You lost Ricky Puig. You lost him for the season. We knew that going into the season, but he wasn't able to make his return. Has since re-injured himself. Will be, no longer an LA Galaxy player, I believe, after this. He's going to miss the whole 2026 season as well. For me, it was like the soul was lost. Like it's very seldom that a player, one loss, can really take the wind out of a team's sails that much. But I think that's kind of what happened. You caught lightning in a bottle in 2025. And when that lightning, dissipated, it was a 0 wins on the road, 0-7-10 road record. At home, just about okay, 7-2-8. You did win 7 of your last 10 home matches, which is something I think to look up from. But you lost Puig, and you would have expected, hey, maybe the offense takes a step back. They did. They took about 4 steps back, but the defense was really what was atrocious, and that has been uh, identified. That's been remedied during the offseason. We could talk about that. And, sometimes these super teams don't work. You did get a couple of very high-powered players on that side of the ball. But, I mean, we're going to talk contributors, but turn the page on 2025 for us.
Yeah, just people point at losing Ricky Puig being a big deal. Obviously, it was. We were still able to win MLS Cup because the system was set up so that if he went down, there were a couple players that could step in and fill that role and distribute and get the ball to where it needed to be, and that we saw that with Mark Delgado and with Gaston Brugman. But those two guys were also gone, right, at the end of the season, along with Dejan Joveljic. These were all very important players, not only throughout the season, but particularly in the playoffs, and they're gone. And so you're talking about you lose your heart, right, in Ricky Puig. Well, you also lose the spine of the team. And you point to how atrocious the defense was. The defense has always been atrocious with this team. And it just happened that in 2025, people didn't really notice it that much because they were scoring at such a high clip that they're keeping the ball in that side of the field and not having to worry so much on defense. Well, when you take away all that attacking prowess and all of a sudden the defense has to deal with the brunt of the attack, I mean, it was horrible. We saw what happened, at Red Bull. We call it right here the Red Wedding. We saw that entire week was just horrible, and it was just a microcosm of how this team was losing games. When it wasn't the defense, it's just they weren't attacking, and there's a lot of issues, and I'll get into it as we talk about it because some of your questions that you lined up for me will allow me to answer some of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you mentioned that
turn the
7-0
page
loss
on this horrible season.
You talk about that 7-0 loss to Red Bull. That was also personal. That was May. That was after the MLS Cup loss, which I think Red Bull as a whole, team, fans, felt like they never got a fair shake. There was an issue with a defender injury right before. We didn't have our best defensive pairing out, and it was one of those interesting. It happened right before the season started. So I think that's going to be kind of a guiding point there. Andre Reyes, wasn't able to make it go, and he was replaced by a player who wasn't fully fit. And so Red Bull and they got a fair shake, and boy, they took it out on a bad team that day for sure. Yeah. But it wasn't all negatives. Like I said, the offense did have some contributors here. You had Joseph Paint, still 10 goals to assist. I couldn't wait to see him in AFCON this year until his team didn't qualify for AFCON this year. You got Gabriel Peck, 7 goals to assist. Diego Fagundes with 6 and 2. Marco Royce, 5 goals and 8 assists. Then from there on, a whole lot of nothing. Christian Ramirez, 4 goals. Cuevas, 2 goals. Yamane with a goal and 4 assists. So you had those contributors, and let's just turn the page. Let's talk about who left, who came in. Outgoing players: Miguel Berry, Diego Fagundes, Eric Zavaleta, and Zonka on defense there. Is there a lot to be lost here? I mean, you would think that someone like Jorgensen, Zonka might have been skilled enough to be missed, but the defense was bad. And I don't care how many good players you have. If the defense is bad and you lose a good it's got to be a push at worst, right?
Yeah, there were some signs about Zonka before he joined the team. And because the moment it was announced that he was joining LA Galaxy, fans from his previous team were saying good riddance. They're saying good luck, Galaxy fans. This is one of the worst players we ever had. We were like, why do people hate him so much? And when he first joined the team, it wasn't that noticeable. But as the losses started to pile on, we started to see varying performances where in some games he looked okay, and in some games he was just completely awful. You might as well have had like a mannequin out there. And by the end of the season, people were really, against him. He was in the doghouse. It did not help, by the way, and I don't know how many people know this outside of LA, that Yoshida, the captain of the team that won the MLS Cup, returned in 2025 with a reduced contract, and he was public about it. He dropped some F-bombs and everything with the LA Times, talking about how upset he was that MLS is structured this way. You win a cup, you're the captain of the team, you have to take a pay cut. He said he did it because his daughter had acclimated to living in LA, and he didn't want to like just pick up and move when she's still young and getting used to it. It did not help that Zonka was earning more than him when he was brought on board. So
Yeah.
yeah, Eric Zavaleta, a lot of people called him, I'm sorry to say, a lot of people called him a nepo baby because he's the coach's cousin. I mean, nephew. Well, he's gone. Diego Fagundes was a player who we leaned a lot on last season, but when you lost so many players like Ricky Delgado, Brugman, who's left, right? And so we had Fagundes, who was was fine on set pieces, but his play was up and down throughout the season. Although he kind of showed some improvement toward the end, I think that his time in LA was coming to an end. The team let him go. Miguel Berry is just, he's like a wild card, big body, who at one time might have been very effective in other clubs, but his contributions were far and few between. It's just you never knew what to expect from Barry. There were times when he came in and he would do something, but more often than not, he was just a big guy who was out there, and he would make some of the weirdest decisions on attack that would leave you baffled. But he's gone, so sorry. I mean, these are guys that will not be missed. I hate to say it, especially once we see who joined the club.
Yeah, so you saw the problem, you addressed the problem. I do have to respect that. The problem was defense. You brought in Jacob Glesnes from Philadelphia, one of the perennial best defenders on one of the perennial best defensive teams in the league. Brought in Justin Hack from NYCFC. He's a center back, but in a pinch, he can play some center midfield. He plays a bunch of positions, but defensive midfield, mostly center back. Nascimento, I believe that is a full purchase. He's been with the squad. And then you had to go and make a couple splash signings. Eric Tommy, now he's a player who played with Stuttgart and Dusseldorf in Germany, played with Sporting KC for 4 seasons and really kind of struggled to make an impact. He battled injuries a couple of different years, and you know his best season is maybe 7 goals, 4 assists back in 2024. So he could slot in, and if he's healthy, he could really, really bring something to this team. I mean, that Sporting KC team is bad. So I really want to see what Tommy has on what could be a much better offense. At least he has players to contribute to. And one of my favorite players in Major League Soccer, João Klaus, who I think is going to be a fantastic. I mean, right now, when fantasy starts, he's going to be on every roster, and I'm going to have him projected at 22 goals this season. I really think he's that special of a player if he remains healthy.
No, obviously, like you said, the biggest issue this team has had to deal with for the longest time has been a very soft defense. And we are, at least me, I'm friends with assistant manager Dan Kalishman, the original Galaxy captain, who spent some time with Red Bull, I mean, when they were still the Metro Stars, I believe. But really nice guy, tough as nails. So anytime the defense did something bad, I knew that, Kalishman was probably grinding his teeth and, punching walls or whatever. So to finally give him some good, solid players to work with, he's like a kid on Christmas morning. But Deus Nascimento, by the way, he's still on loan. I think they extended his loan 6 months. So there's going to be a decision to be made at some point. But he is I think he's under the U22 initiative for now. But yeah, no, definitely. One of the things that we pointed out as these players were being introduced and Glesnes and Hack and Klaus and Tommy is that these are not flashy players. They're not like big, huge signings. So people might say maybe John Klaus, right? Because he's came over from being a DP in St. Louis, but they're not like big, flashy guys. We have described them as lunch pail type guys who put on their hard hat, get to work, and they could fit a variety of roles. You ask them to do a job, they're going to do it, and they're going to do it well. And not only that, one thing that we've gleaned from the conversations we've had with other MLS content creators who cover those teams is that they have really affable personalities. They're very good with their teammates. They're not just leaders on the field, but they're also leaders in the clubhouse. And that's something so important to have on a team where you have a certain level of chemistry. Um, I think our buddy Matt Baker was telling us how Klaus is just a really friendly guy. He likes to kid around with his teammates. And when we had our content creator from Kansas City, he was mentioning how Eric Tommy liked to play practical jokes on his teammates, and he'll be the first one to announce when the players get man of the match awards. So you love to see that on your team, and also there's like an interesting mix because you have Marco Roig, who's German, right? And then you have Matheus Nascimento, who's from Brazil. Well, João Klaus, he's got German and Brazilian roots. Eric
Yeah.
Tommy is German, right? So you have that interesting dynamic right there. And it'll be interesting to see how they all work together. I'm just really excited to see how this team does. So far in the preseason, they're undefeated, but preseason is something else. But I I'm just curious to know with what intensity they're trying to prepare because they got CONCACAF Champions Cup right on the horizon.
Yeah, I am excited for the additions, and we've seen how the LA Galaxy pendulum swings. 2024 was bad. 2025 was very good. Or sorry, 2024 was very good. 2023 was very bad. 2025 was very bad. Like, was 2024, we were thinking that the bad season was the outlier, but it might be that 2024 was the outlier. But with these additions, I mean, this depth chart, I mean, we're cooking with fire here. I really think that this could be one of the best depth charts in Major League Soccer. And we're looking at the betting. LA Galaxy is like fourth in the West to make the cup. Like they have risen astoundingly. And I completely agree with that valuation on what they have. And it starts with the top. Paintsel out left, Peck on the right, Klaus up top. That is one of the best attacking tridents if they can stay together, if they can stay healthy. I don't think those are huge ifs. We know Paintsill, he runs big and hard, and he's going to miss a couple games. But, Peck is acclimated himself to Major League Soccer. And, dude, this is a good offense, man.
Yeah, no, it's not the dynamic offense we got with Ricky Puig, but it's an offense that will find ways to attack any one of these guys and score a goal. And with Eric Tommy, we were told that he's like, he's the kind of guy that kind of find some space at the top of the third, and he'll score some bangers. If you sleep on him, he will punish you. But then you have Paintsel and Peck on the wings, who are constantly, pestering defenses and trying to attract attention. And then if they cut around the corners, you're cooked. And then of course you have a proven scorer in João Klaus in the middle. One thing that we heard from both from Kansas City and St. Louis is that both Klaus and Tommy were starved for service with their teams. These are two teams that had struggled, especially the last two seasons, particularly St. Louis, who went from being, a potential contender to just, all these failed promises. And João Klaus is a player who they leaned on a lot in the past and just found less and less to work with. We were told that as dismal as their season was last year, he was the one bright light on that team. And now he's with LA Galaxy, and he has an opportunity to be part of this very interesting attack, which I haven't seen in person yet. I'm going to be there tomorrow at CVI, so I'll get to see what exactly they're bringing, and hopefully I'll be very excited by the end of the day.
Hopefully. I always find it interesting when the Western Conference teams do really well. For us, on the East Coast, that's, wife and the dog are in bed, get to watch whatever I want. And last year, there just wasn't a whole lot from the Western Conference as a whole. It was tough to even find, a game that I felt was, kind of worth my time. And this is a team, I am hooked. I will be watching them the first couple weeks of the season. That is for sure. Let's take a step back now and look at the midfield, because behind Eric Tommy and, Marco Royce will be taking his reps at the number 10 also. We have behind him projected Edwin Cerrillo and Marco Royce, but there's a lot of talent behind there. Elijah Winder, Sanabria, Parente. Let's talk about this midfield, because this could really be a strength of the squad too.
Yeah. Another thing that had affected this team a lot in the past was a lack of depth. it's especially after we lost so many players at the end of 2024. And so we used to joke about how like you lose one player and it'll be like a lose, it'll be like a deck of cards just coming down and it kind of wasn't like that last year. But we never really got to see that depth until maybe towards the end of the season, where some players started stepping up, and at that point, there was really nothing to play for. It was more about pride than anything. But looking at this roster, with the exception of probably Winder and Parente, I guess any one of those guys could be a starter on any given day. Winder is a player that came over from Louisville, and we're still looking forward to seeing him go through a maturation process and evolve into somebody that could be serviceable in case he's needed. But it was hit or miss of him last year. But hopefully, after with one more year under his belt, he'll be somebody we can really count on as far as MLS is concerned. But yeah, um, Tommy, he's somebody who is interchangeable with Marco Roche, and it's I don't know if you want me to address it right now or if it's part of the your the series of questions that you have, but um, Marco Roche is somebody who is a little long in the tooth, and we don't expect him to be there starting every single match of this long marathon that is MLS. So having somebody like Eric Tommy there, it's a huge plus.
Yeah, and I was a little disappointed in Royce last season. I guess he did take a step up and he was playing a little better than he was the previous year. But um, he, for me, if you know the number 10 on your team is going to be missing and that you could fill that role, I would be licking my lips looking to get in there. And it just didn't seem like, um, I can't speak for the player, but it seemed like something was missing there. It didn't seem like that was quite in the cards for him to step up. And for all the things we have to say about Puig, and I know once the player gets hurt, it's like, oh my God, this is a catastrophe. We got to MLS Cup with this guy. He's a beautiful player to watch. But you guys were ready to run him out of town before the MLS Cup win early in 2024. Like I see the message boards, man. You guys always dancing around with the ball again, can't get a pass off, losing control. It wasn't all positives there either, which kind of makes the downfall of this team even more suspect.
No, it's interesting to see how Galaxy fans react online, depending on where you go. I know that the more hardcore fans were a little bit more patient with him, but because we've seen guys come and go that shine and then they disappear. With Marco Royce, you, obviously he brings this great pedigree, he has so much talent, but the one thing that he benefited from the most in 2024 was that he had somebody like Ricky Puig who's very quick and speedy, and he could do the things that Marco Royce couldn't do now at his age. Well, Puig is gone in 2025, so it's on you, and we expected Sanabria to do some of that. He's not the same player as Ricky Puig. He's not being asked to do the same things. But Sanabria went down with injury as well to begin the season. And then he was hurt a couple of times throughout the season. And so there's a lot falling on Royce. And it in some games he did shine, but more often than not, teams would find ways to exploit his limitations and they would punish LA Galaxy. And we saw what we saw.
So the goal is going to be not getting punished this season, and that's got to be on the back line. So I have two fullbacks here, John Nelson, Miki Yamane. Yamane is a very interesting player to watch. I mean, he will leave, bye guys, I'm going upfield. He will carry the ball. He will taxi it all the way up the field, and you will find him in possession, flinging in crosses because he's standing in the box. Like, that is how much freedom he's had. Can you talk about the fullbacks, what they're expected to do, and then, just go over the depth there?
No, we're very fortunate. I was actually like based on the questions you had given me before you came on, I had like written up something about the fullbacks, but I'll tell you right now, we're very fortunate to have both sides, four guys that could be starters on any MLS club. I'm talking about Johnny Nelson, Julian Aude, Miki Amene, and Mauricio Cuevas. Mauricio Cuevas is somebody that maybe a lot of MLS fans aren't familiar with, but over here in a season that was pretty much forgettable, he really stepped up. He showed that when Miki Amene was not available or just wasn't playing well, he could go in there and he could go up the wings and he would deliver these amazing pinpoint passes to his teammates that either they fumbled and we saw that because they didn't score many goals, or they would just drive in and get these amazing results. So Mauricio Cuevas is somebody that, especially towards the end of the season, we were saying, well, what if Yamane doesn't come back at the end of the season? This nightmare season. Well, we have Mauricio Cuevas, and that's okay. It's fine. We'll be okay. But no, he's back this year and amazing. Like I said, you have Johnny Nelson, a guy who was a misfit with St. Louis. He came in with LA Galaxy, won a cup, and he had a few rough moments like every Galaxy player did last year. But we, on our podcast, we nicknamed him The Rock because he's just constant and he's just no nonsense, nose to the ground guy. He does his job, and if you're not careful, he will also punish you with a banger from outside the box. But Johnny Nelson is very reliable. He's more of a stay-at-home guy.
Yeah.
While Julian Alde, yeah, and then Julian Alde is the inverse, where he's a guy who is a taller, stronger fella who will run up the field and he will join the attack, and then also have the legs to get back. So you have all these different options, and I'm guessing right now that Vanny and Kalishman are looking at this and they're like licking their chops and they're like, yeah, what are we gonna throw out there? What kind of, how can we exploit their teams? Defense. We have these amazing players that we can sneak in and do the most with the guys up top. So yeah, I'm really excited to see them play. And then with Harbor Miller, he's somebody who is a homegrown, and we saw him shine during Leagues Cup, and he's somebody who I think has a bright future. We're going to see a great maturation from him also in 2026.
Love it. Now at the center back position, you got 4 guys who could be starters on a lot of squads. It didn't work together last season, but Jacob Glesnes, he is going to be your best. He needs to be your best player on the field. If you want to take a step forward, he's got to be the best player on the field. Then next to him, I put Justin Hack, but Carlos Garces might have something to say about that. Maya Yoshida might have something to say about that. Give us your best 2 pairing, and then let's talk about the depth there.
Oh my God, I don't know where to start because I'm so excited. I used to be a center back, so I look at this and I'm like, geez, there's so many people. And there's somebody you didn't list there either. It's Chris Rindo. He's a guy who came from Ventura County FC, which is LA Galaxy's MLS Next Pro team. And he came into the team, like, I think midway through the season, and people were like, who is this guy, right? There were some injuries and we were missing people in the back. And he came in and immediately from the start, starter level. This guy could start for LA Galaxy, at least for that team. And I think he would probably find his way into most MLS teams' starting lineup as a center back as well. He's a fantastic player. So you have 5 players for 2 positions, right? And then you have the captain, Maya Yoshida. Yeah, I was gonna address that real quick. Yoshida, how can I say it? Like I say, he had a difficult time in 2025, right? And there was speculation he was going to retire at the end of the year, but he's back once again with Hack and Glesnes joining the team. Galaxy have all this talent at the back. We expect Garces to keep evolving, but with Rindo coming in there, it's so muddled. So Yoshida comes back, and we're like, okay, well, he's a captain. He wears the armband, but is he really gonna see a lot of time out there? He's on his last legs as far as MLS is concerned. And yeah, what a dilemma to have, right? What a problem to try to solve. Like, who do you put out there on any given day? We know we got with Garces. Garces is, he's a strong physical presence. He's got speed. Many times last year, people will complain about the defense, how terrible they were. Well, there are times when Yoshida was caught with his pants down and he could not get back on defense. And the guy who run back and cover for him was Carlos Garces. And he would run back and it would make it seem like Yoshida wasn't having that much of an issue. But in those games when it was Yoshida by himself and somebody else, it was bad. Carlos Garces is somebody that once he takes care of his temper issues, which he had issues with that at the very beginning of 2025, I think that he can mature into another fantastic player. We keep saying that word, maturation, because we had so many young players that came in and right from the get-go, they were thrown into the fire of 2025. And I think that, what is it? Pressure makes diamonds, right? And so I think that these players, having had that season last year, will not want to repeat that. And I think this year will come in with that renewed vigor and drive that will encourage them to do better this year, especially in that back line. It's so busy. Any one of those guys could be a starter, and I'm sure they're all going to
All
be
right, good stuff. I
vying
think we
for.
lost you for
Hello?
just a second there, Edgar. But
Sorry
let's
about
move
that.
back. And now the last player on the depth chart is the goalkeeper, Novak Mikovic. What do you have to say?
I think a lot of people, Galaxy fans are divided, right? But I'm one of the ones that I'm like, to me, he's mid. He's mid. A lot of people say, "Well, he's fantastic. He makes these, good saves. The score would have been a lot worse if it wasn't for him." He's a goalkeeper and he's doing his job. I mean, what do you expect him to do? He's not bad, but he's just mid. We haven't had a
Sounds
good
like a
goalkeeper.
center back to me.
Yeah, sorry. We haven't had a good goalkeeper since Jaime Pinedo in the 2014 season. What he was amazing. And we have just gone through all these other goalkeepers throughout the years. Never one where you're like, this guy's the man. And I feel like Mikovic is just, he's there and he's okay. But there were also throughout the season, we would hear how he's not very vocal. He wouldn't really talk to his teammates. Maybe it's a language issue, but they said that we heard from the locker room that the one time when he was the most vocal and you would hear him talking the most was when Joveljic was there, who's his countryman. But Joveljic is gone. And so Novak is kind of there by himself, like on his island. And he's fine, but I don't think he's top tier.
I don't think he's
I
top tier
would
either.
not be surprised. I mean, I would love for LA Galaxy to go out and find somebody to replace him. But hey, the one guy I really look forward to seeing get better is JT Marcinkowski because he was such a great goalkeeper for San Jose, and yeah, he had that horrible, horrible injury, and I'm waiting to see if he can come back and at least get to a little bit of that same level he used to play at before.
That could be the answer at the position. Let's go now and go with some questions. I have 2 pages of questions here, and we're just going to take a little bit of a deeper dive. Which player outside of the starting 11 has the best chance at winning a starting job?
Take your pick. We were just talking about that. There is so much depth on this squad than a year ago, especially along that back line. There's a lot of players that could, at any given day, can be told, "Okay, you're starting," and they'll be like, "Okay, I'm good to go, ready to go. Let's go." And that's something Galaxy has not had for a while. In 2024, they kind of had it because that team was so dynamic, but not to this level, not across that midfield and that defense. And looking forward, like I said, I'm looking forward to see what Vanny and Calvin put out there on any given day.
I was thinking midfield because, if Royce could be on his way out, if Tommy, he's battled injuries and stuff before. I was thinking maybe like Wander, Sanabria, Parente, one of those guys. If you had to pick a name.
Well, like you said, Royce, he's somebody who's not going to be there the entire season. So I would expect Tommy to come in there and take that role and maybe get mentorship from Royce. Help him ease into the Galaxy style of play, or vanity ball, as we like to call it, and that makes that transition easier for Tommy as he comes over from a really dismal Kansas City team onto this team that has so many options ready for him. So yeah, Tommy's definitely somebody who, but that's the thing. I mean, Royce, if he's healthy, if he is willing to run, I think he's a starter. But you look at Tommy and you're like, yeah, this guy's probably a better bet to go out there and create more chances with the guys in front of him at this point.
All right, then let's move on. What are some realistic expectations for the team?
I would say first would be getting past at least the first 2 rounds of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. To me, that would be a good sign that things are headed in the right direction. Secondly, finishing in the top 4 or 5 in the West, and more than anything, being competitive and not avoiding I mean, avoiding losing in every conceivable manner like they did last year. Uh, I said like last year, it was a chamber of horrors, man. Just imagine for a second, one of the more painful losses you've ever seen your team endure. Now imagine seeing this every week, but each week was like a different way to die, kind of like a thousand ways to die.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I agree for sure, but I think that this is a new team. This is a new team, and I don't think that you can necessarily take anything that happened last year. You know, that was just a snowball of disappointment, but I don't take, just like in 2024, they didn't care about what happened in 2023. I think you just got to turn the page and move on. And that's really going to be, you know, the strength of your team is how resilient the squad can be. And I guess that's to some questions that haven't been answered yet. But what are some storylines to follow throughout the season? A lot of people watching this video are not going to be LA Galaxy fans. What should they be looking out for week in and week out?
the situation for the fullbacks on both sides. I think we addressed that already. You have four players who could be in the starting 11 every week on any MLS club. I'm also curious to see how Paintsel and Peck adapt to playing with Klaus and Tommy joining the team. Royce may still have the skill. He doesn't have the durability to run, the entire season. I think Tommy will find a way to work effectively along Edwin Cerrillo and Lucas Sanabria. And speaking of Sanabria, he's a player that many Galaxy fans are expecting to have a breakout season. He's someone to keep an eye on if you're not a Galaxy fan. Lastly, like I said, seeing what Maya Yoshida's role will be this season, he's a captain, but he had such a difficult time last year. There was speculation he was going to retire. He's back, right? But with Hack and Glesnes in the team and Rindo came up, and Garces being there, I mean, where does Yoshida fit into all this aside from being the captain and the leader of this club? Somebody said, he could lead from the bench. I'm like, no, I don't know about that, but it's. I wonder how things will work out for him across this entire season because MLS is a huge marathon.
Absolutely. Let's now transition and go to some quick Q&A questions. What style are the Galaxy going to match up well against?
Um, Man, I don't want to use 2025 as a template to answer this question, but last season they did well against teams that allowed Peck and Paintsel to just do whatever they wanted on the wings. Uh, Obviously, those guys had a lot of trouble trying to find the net, but things started to look up as the season wore on. And but with this team right now, I want to see LA Galaxy just flood the box. I want to see them get in there, create some disruption along the wings, maybe attract one or two people out, have some spaces for Tommy or for Sanabria or for Cerrillo to try to get in there and punish them. So there's many different ways this team could hurt you. And we said we mentioned the fullbacks, how people like Alde and Yamane and Cuevas are willing to get up there and mix it in and just deliver some nice passes or even get involved in the attack themselves, making cuts across the field. So um, if teams come in, they're expecting the LA Galaxy team to be the same as last year. They're not. They're in for a rude awakening.
That sounds good. On the opposite side of that question, what styles is LA Galaxy going to match up poorly against?
The biggest concern we had last year was the middle. Like we said, the Galaxy lost the spine of the team, right? And no Puig, no Delgado, no Brugman. And then the center backs had so much to work with. The spine of the team was completely soft. We saw so many teams just go down the middle and nobody would really step up and do anything. One of my biggest gripes with this, and a lot of my castmates would also say the thing was that there was this very noticeable gap between the midfield and the defense, where normally you have a CDM who'll come back and try to track the player, or you have a center back who'll step up because he feels that he knows his teammate, his fellow center back is going to be okay in the back by himself. But no, there was this noticeable gap. And then what would happen is that opposing teams would come in, they pass the ball to somebody in the middle, like at the top of the third, and then they look up and they have acres of space. And then they either find somebody who's like coming in, cutting towards the box, or they just unleash a banger. And Galaxy gave up so many of those last year.
Yeah.
It drove us crazy. And also, a lot of times, LA Galaxy was punished when they tried to go in the attack, and they just did not have the legs to come back on counters. And with that defense being stretched out as it was already, that was horrible. Now, will this happen this year? I don't think so. Like you said, we have players that are more
Yeah.
defensive minded that I think will be willing to fill in those roles where they're needed. Make sure that there aren't any of those gaps anymore. As far as the technical weakness, I don't know. I think if they can find a way to catch Gallagher, like I said, the
Yeah.
fullbacks, if they catch him up the field and then come out on a quick counter and catch him like that, I think that's something that you could do against LA Galaxy. And Begovic, like I said, is not a top goalkeeper. If you can find a way to disrupt him, I think that goes a long way towards beating LA Galaxy.
Yeah, those number 10s who, they get in that pocket between the midfield and defense, and then it's just really easy to stretch them out of position. And when I look at, some of the last, even when you were on your winning streak at home at the end of the season, drop points to FC Cincinnati, you got beat by Inter Miami, all the teams that play kind of with that style is going to be an easy way to attack. There is a question a comment in the chat. I'm looking for Matheus Nascimento to improve. He was a big prospect at Botafogo before his injury. Despite flashes last season, it wasn't good enough from him. That's the next question. Which player improves the most in 2026?
Well, it'll be man. That's a good question because I want to say Mateus Nascimento, but he's only on contract for 6 months. His contract expires on June 30th, and now you have Klaus up there. I would put Nascimento above Ramirez as far as the depth chart is concerned. I feel like Christian Ramirez is just too slow. He's too slow. Galaxy did not win a game last season, a regular season game.
There's nothing there. There's nothing. And I told
Yeah,
you last year, there's nothing there.
no,
There are players who outperform because the system is that good, and that's one of the guys. I mean, it's just not good enough. You guys know that now, right? Like,
oh yeah, no, we absolutely. Like I said, Galaxy did not win a game until Nascimento was a starter, and then he started scoring goals, and that's when they first started winning games. Last season, he got hurt a couple times, and it sucked because he was on loan, and you want to get the most out of him.
yeah.
So then at the end of the season, you can sit there and be like, okay, was he worth it? Is he somebody we want to bring back? A big topic of discussion was, do you bring Nascimento back, or do you go out and try to get another forward? And at that point, we were expecting Ricky to come back, so we were not expecting to bring in a DP level forward, right? So we were thinking within the constraints of this team, what kind of a forward can you bring in to work alongside Nascimento, or are you just going to rely on him? And then, of course, everything fell the way it did. You bring in Klaus, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, so where does Nascimento fit into this? Is he going to get an opportunity
Yeah.
to show what he can do? But that's where I point towards Sanabria, who is somebody that I think is going to have a huge improvement this season. I think he's going to be like a starter, an everyday starter. I think he's somebody who is very shy, very reserved, and I think had a difficult time adjusting to living in Los Angeles and being a leader type on this team. But from what I've heard, he's acclimated now. He's kind of come out of his shell, and so we're looking forward to seeing how that affects his performance on the field as well. So keep an eye on him.
Well, I like both of those answers. Nascimento is someone I'm really excited. I think him and Jack Klaus are going to work very well together. Klaus, big, like 6'3", 200 pounds. He's my size, 6'3", 200 pounds. But then you got Nascimento, 6 foot, 157. It's a nice little foil there. And both these guys, they can take headers. They have, different skills. Jack Klaus may be a little slower in his age, but he's not a plotter. He looked that way with St. Louis like 2 years ago. He's not a plotter. He's there's still some get up there, and he's complete. He brings the head balls. He brings excellent shots, even from distance. He can walk the ball into the back of the net if someone will let him. I really think that him and Nascimento should work really well together. And there's going to be opportunity. There's going to be opportunity when you're that big and a couple of years older. Yeah, and a knee, a hamstring, things pop up throughout the season. And I
Yeah.
think that would be, absolutely vital there. One more comment here. If Nascimento plays 50% of Galaxy's games during this new loan period, the club will be obligated to sign him permanently for $6 million, I believe. Well, there you go. Welcome to the bench.
Yeah, right.
um, Kidding, of course. On the other side of that, is there a player who's going to regress this season? A player who might get exposed, lose their job, for one reason or another?
Well, I already spoke about Maya Yoshida and how I feel like this is likely his last season with LA Galaxy. Um, I'm curious to know. I'm curious to see actually if he makes it past the summer transfer window with the World Cup being here. Uh, Obviously, he's not playing for the Japanese national team anymore, but there's going to be a flurry of transfers at during the summer, especially with the World Cup here and so many eyes and ears on all the different talents that are available, not just for some of the top clubs, but some of the other smaller teams that have outstanding players. So I'm sure LA Galaxy will be looking and trying to weigh their options with Maya Yoshida. One thing LA Galaxy tries to do for their players is that outgoing players, they try to make sure they have a soft landing. Too soft, you might say, with people like Mark Delgado, right? But with Maya Yoshida, I think he's gonna regress. We saw signs of that already last year, and it's just father time. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? And somebody who a lot of people might be upset if I say this, but might regress a little is Edwin Cerrillo. He's somebody that I think has a bright future ahead of him, but there were at times last year where, in a very frustrating year, obviously, he it looked like he was trying too hard, or there were times when you could tell that his heart just wasn't in it, and he was just kind of going through the motions. And you hate to see that in a young player because you could feel like that somebody took the soul out of him, right? But I think seeing all his new teammates and seeing this renewed sense of positive nature within the team, I think it might hopefully give him some more. What's the word I'm looking for? I guess encouragement to go out there and do his job. But the easy answer is Mayashida. The very difficult answer, I would say Edwin Cerrillo.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us today as we kind of wrap up our episode here. Any final thoughts on the LA Galaxy for 2026?
I'm just curious to see how well they do this year. Obviously, we're not going to get a repeat of last year. Last year was arguably the worst LA Galaxy team in team history. And nobody wants to see that again. And the East is stacked, but I feel like there's some teams in the West they can have something to say as far as MLS Cup is concerned. I don't think LA Galaxy is in that argument, but I think they're definitely going to be there making the playoffs and making a push. And who knows what happens in the summer? Like we said, there's this season is a marathon. A year ago, we were just hoping that they would remain competitive. We were hoping it would finish in the top four. Nobody had any idea what was going to happen. But this year, I feel much more confident in seeing the roster that has been put together because they looked at all the mistakes that they made last year, and I feel like they were much more prepared this time around. And even the shock of losing Pooch for another season, the Galaxy rebounded well. And real quick, you said this at the very beginning, and it's something we've alluded to on our show. I feel that LA Galaxy is probably starting to look at a future without Ricky Puig because as much as we love Ricky Puig, as entertaining as he is, as kind-hearted as he is, he's all around just a wonderful person. It would have been 2 years since he last played.
That's
That's
huge.
a long time. And if you look at it, if you look at a calendar, his last game was in 2024, and then let's say he starts playing again in 2027. That's 3 calendar years, right? I mean, but
Yeah.
it's more than 24 months. It's like 25, 26 months. There's no guarantee that he's gonna come back the same way. There's also in the back of your mind that that voice telling you like, what if you get hurt? Because from my understanding, he picked up this second injury when he was back home in Barcelona, just on a pickup game. He turned, heard a pop, went to get it checked out. Oh, you're done.
Yeah.
Got to get surgery again. And it's like, oh my God, you got to go through that whole process again. it's got to be weighing on the back of his mind. Like, what
Of
if I
course.
get hurt again in the most innocuous fashion? And that's the hard part about having an injury like that. But he's young though, and I hope that because he's young and he's able to recover in such a fashion that maybe
Yeah.
next year he'll be back. And if not, it's time for LA Galaxy fans to start thinking about
Yeah.
the future without him.
I think it's already time. And you said 2 years. MLS is one of the most physical leagues. If you're gonna pick up an extra little push or something, it's gonna be here. Obviously we hope the best for Ricky Puig. But the last time I think me and you talked was about, oh, he's superhuman. His recovery is supposed to take a year, and it's taken 5 months, and he's already playing
Damn.
soccer again, and he's taking pictures. Well, maybe sit this one out. Maybe take your full recommended dose there, and
Yeah.
get back to health, because I think he is one of the dynamic players that really makes this league so much fun to watch and to cover, even from a neutral standpoint. So Edgar, thank you so much for being here, and thank you to everyone at home for watching. We're previewing all 30 Major League Soccer teams. I think we have 12 left after this episode. Already 6 are scheduled, so we are right on track to get these teams covered before the start of the Major League Soccer season. Edgar, thank you for your time and insight tonight, and thank you everyone who tuned in.